Welcome to Podnutz Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 139. I'm Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. We bring you tips and ideas for your IT business. The call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Marvin Bee from mbsystems.net. How you doing, Marvin?
I'm doing great, Jeff.
Excellent. Also, Chris Carruthers should be joining us from the remote support tech team. He was having some technical difficulties, so we'll get started, and hopefully he'll join us here shortly. All right. We have Jetpack Live show number 4 is the season finale. We'll be talking about the ever-elusive cloud. Meet fellow techs and business owners online. Learn real ways to grow your IT business. You'll also be hearing tales from the trenches. Learn sales and marketing tips you can actually use. You can chat online during the show with other technicians. The last show is on July 20th, 2015, and it's Monday at 9:30 a.m. So actually, as of us recording, it will be tomorrow morning, which means I have to get up early and get ready for that. Got to put on my HD makeup and all that kind of stuff and get ready for the show. So. Also, we have CompTIA ChannelCon August 3rd through the 5th, 2015 in Chicago, where Marvin, Chris, and myself and many others will be there. Go to the link in the show notes, get your free ticket to CompTIA ChannelCon in Chicago, provided by our good friend Corey Fruitman from Instant House Call. If you guys are going to CompTIA ChannelCon in Chicago, join us for the Tech Nibble and Podcaster Meetup Sunday, August 2nd at 5 to 7 p.m. Get a chance to mingle with the Podnutz, Tech Nibble, Mike Tech Show, the Computer Business Podcast, and Tech Vets communities. Also, after that, join us after the meetup for at 10 p.m. that night for Escape from the Room with a real live zombie. The tickets are $28, and we need to get a count for how many people are going. So if you want to do that, send me an email or go to itjetpack.com/connect and get your tickets. All right, Mr. Marvin, what has been going on in your business?
Oh, let's see. The wonderful joys of Crypto Wall 3.0 cropped its head up again. So had a nice, it was actually interesting because I had to do it for 2 days. One client had multiple offices. Got it on Wednesday in one office, but didn't nobody noticed anything in that particular station. I've got AVG business set up in those offices, but they have a tech in-house that sets up all the desktops, and I just manage the servers and the overall network. So when he set up the computer, he didn't let me know that he put a new computer up so that I could add them to the centralized AVG setup.
Oh.
So that person didn't get any alerts or anything. So that was going on for almost a day before anybody realized their files were encrypted. While I'm in there cleaning up that one, oh, I forgot to mention a nice important part. It was the daughter of one of the owners.
Oh.
So that was fun trying to tell them, your kid did this.
Right.
So while I was in there cleaning that up, I got a notification that one of the remote servers had just had an infection. CryptoWall.
Oh.
2 CryptoWall persons in the same firm in 2 days. So
unbelievable. Now, do you realize, did you figure out how that was spreading?
Yeah, with them, it was basically an email.
Okay.
So it was pretty quick, and it's quick to find out who it is, so that helps a lot. And then it's just a matter of restoring the backups. Unfortunately, the folders that got infected were pretty large folders. We're talking 9 gigs in one folder, 50 gigs in another. So
Ooh.
It took a little bit of time to restore, but it wasn't horrible.
Okay.
They got all their stuff back. So that was nice.
Yeah, there could always be a worst case scenario. I know I just had the CryptoWall 3.0 for the first time. Actually, first time for any CryptoWall virus that I've actually seen. And it's they're pretty good at what they do. It's pretty nasty. Once that stuff's encrypted, if you don't have backups, you're really hosed at that point. And there's a lot of people out there that I think, probably not business wise, but for residential, that don't have backups. And it's like, what do? You pay the ransom, or you just kind of lose your stuff.
Yeah. let's see, what else have I done? I did a wireless troubleshooting visit. Um, Actually, that was that this week or last week? Where I actually got to charge. It was an attorney in a law firm that was complaining that the remote was slow. But while he was in the office during the day, his office is actually remote as well. And there's probably 15 people in that office that remote over to the server fine all during the day, except when he would go home, he would complain about it being slow. And this actually had been going on for about the last month. And he just wouldn't believe that it had to be his home connection. And part of the reason he wouldn't believe it is because AT&T would send out their text and say, oh, everything's fine.
Of course they do.
Of course. So he did convince them to change out a modem, and it was still bad. So at first, the company wasn't going to pay for him to bring anybody out. He'd have to pay for it himself. But eventually, as attorneys, they scream and they say, well, I can't bill. So I got to go out there with my diagnostic tool, and come to find out, the Wi-Fi was bad. And I was able to prove it was bad by doing my wireless connection from the Fluke, showing him dropped packets. I had I don't know if I told you on the Fluke One Touch, I can also use a Fluke link runner and do an actual wireless to wired performance test. And it will actually push packets back and forth and show the performance there. So I could show him the dropped performance on his network. So we got to do that, but it turned out that the modem that they replaced had nothing to do with his Wi-Fi.
Oh, no.
They had a separate wireless access point.
Okay.
Literally sitting right next to the modem that they never even looked at. And I looked at him and I said, did they even touch this? He goes, no. I said, well, that's your problem. And literally, I'm standing right next to the wireless access point and still losing packets. And I said, well, so I got to charge $250 to do that.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you what, man, that's awesome, because that tool obviously saved you a lot of time using it, because, a lot of times we go in there and we go, yeah, some people say the wireless is bad. Some people will go, mine's working okay or whatever. And it's hard to troubleshoot those. But when you got a tool that you hook up to that and you can see the lost packets, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, it was nice. His actually air quality was great. I mean, that's one of the great things about that tool. I mean, we can all take our tablets, and throw a wispy, app on there, just do some pinging and stuff like that. But the tool actually shows the air quality. It shows surrounding SSIDs, tells if there's interference. And literally, he was like 30 feet from the access point and just losing connection. And, I had to explain to him that the reason AT&T wasn't going to find that issue, because if all they're doing is checking connection and browsing to a web page, of course it's going to work.
Right.
Because your web page is not a constant connection that's needed. But when you're doing remote desktop, that's a constant connection. So if you lose, connection for even a second, it's going to drop. So,
it's amazing, because, I know a lot of people probably know this, but I remember when they were troubleshooting my last ISP that I had here, and they had this big machine that they would hook up to the line, and it would do all these tests and everything was saying it was okay, but yet I was still having a problem and they couldn't figure it out. I'm almost wondering if they had a little bit of higher end piece of equipment, and I would imagine this was a pretty high end piece of equipment, but it didn't check everything, and there's a lot of guesswork that went into it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it might be checking just, their three things that they need to check, but it's that fourth thing, which is, I had to hold my tongue, because I didn't want to say that the AT&T guy didn't know what he was doing, but it was hard when he didn't even look at the access point. So it's
like, what's that box sitting there? I have no idea. It's in the closet. It's just a box.
Yeah, the modem's fine. Your connection's good. Yeah, if I plug in, everything works just fine. But on the Wi-Fi, I don't understand.
And sometimes, that's one of those things, even when you're doing a, residential system, a lot of times, in the past, I've not always checked the wireless connection. Now I tend to do that a little bit more, after fixing the system up, because sometimes your wired connection will work just fine and you go to get on Wi-Fi. Last thing you want is your customer to take their computer home and go, I can't get on my Wi-Fi network. It's not working. And all because you didn't take the extra, 30 seconds to check and see if it's working or not.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Good stuff.
So, let's see. Oh, I do want to, I don't know if I should mention their names, but I had a couple of guys email me in the last week all about the show.
Oh, nice.
And they were just doing some follow-up stuff, asking for links and stuff like that. So just wanted you guys to know that people are watching, people are paying attention. One of them was several shows back.
Okay.
Did you see Chris's email?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, we're going to miss you, Chris.
What happened?
He's sent an email. They think he'll need to sit it out. The network is down. The phone doesn't work. And I'm not able to call out for some reason.
Wow, maybe you should call a technician to come in.
It's a bad day at the Carruthers household. Wow.
Go to the office, Chris. Go to the office.
Yep, go to the office.
Yeah, I don't know how far his office is away from his house, so, and I know he tries to take the Sundays off and stuff. So, oh, yeah, we're going to miss Chris. He's always got something good to say. Anyways. Okay. Anything else?
I think that'll be enough to start. We should have some good emails today, right?
Yeah, we got some good emails. And then something I want to bring up somebody was asking, I think in the last show, about how do I get rid of my e-scrap, my electronic scrap, right? Either paid or unpaid. And so John D's on Facebook, I believe, he said, this is a recycler certification I require from anyone I recycle with. It's the R2-2013. Great resource to find people or give to sell or to give or sell your e-scrap to. And it's sustainableelectronics.org. And I will have a link to that in the show notes. So you guys can check that out. But yeah, you'll find a reliable recycler in your area that you can get rid of that scrap. And it's perfect for me because I need to find somebody that I can get rid of it. And I want to make sure that they're, recycling it responsibly. They're not just, basically taking the stuff, getting the stuff they want out of it and throwing the rest in the landfill. So thank you, John. Appreciate that. And I know you're in the chat room today. So, all right, so let's go into the emails. All right. This is from Malcolm. It says, hi, I am just a one-man band working from my home as an IT tech computer support repairs. Just wanted to let you know your shows are great, full of great advice. I thought it would be just me with the awkward customers and working out how to cost job has always been an issue. I am in the UK, but your advice and real life stories are helpful worldwide. Keep up the good work. Great show, Malcolm. Thank you, Malcolm, for the email. I appreciate that. And hopefully everybody's getting something out of this. All right. Second email is, this is a neat new tool. And this is from Steve. I'm going to attempt his last name. I think it's Erostigai, something like that. So Steve, if I butchered your name, I'm sorry. Here's a tool to extract the OEM Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10 key from the Dell and perhaps others' BIOSes. This is needed if you reinstall without the Dell media. These laptops don't come with key stickers anymore. It's oemkey.exe. It's free. So again, I will have a link to that in the show notes. You guys can check that out. I looked at it. It looks like a real simple little application. It's free. And if you can get that, basically the OEM key off of there, that would be perfect. As long as the other thing is, I think sometimes you have to be aware that even with some of the tools we use nowadays, like Project Key or something like that, if you go and you get the key, you've got to make sure there was always a difference between the OEM key from Dell, HP, Gateway, whatever, and the sticker. There was actually it was still an OEM key, but it was like a vanilla OEM key instead of tied to the Dell, HP, or whatever. So if you were ever doing a vanilla OEM install on any of these machines because the hard drive was gone, they didn't have the recovery media, you didn't have the recovery media, you could use a Windows 7 OEM, just plain Jane, throw it on that computer, download the drivers and stuff like that. But one of the things you had to do is you had to make sure that you use that key on the bottom, because the OEM key that you might have pulled using Project Key or whatever would not work. So you just have to be aware of that. And it's different in every. I've ran into some weird things where I'm like, in some places it is the OEM key, and it'll work with everything. And in some places I found where it just doesn't. So, all right. And the third email. All right, this is a little bit long, and this is from Anonymous because he didn't want me to say his name. Make sure that well, anyways, just Anonymous. Anyway, it says, Jeff, I have been self-employed as a computer technician for 10 years. Before that, I was working for corporations in IT for 8. I started working with computers when I was 31. Okay. At first, I had insurance, but I felt that if I did not have a problem for 2 years, the amount I saved in not having insurance would pay for a hard drive to be sent to somewhere like Gilware, for the data to be extracted, and if any hardware that went wrong, its replacement cost would be cheaper than the data extraction. I mostly work with residential people with some small companies sprinkled in. I avoid companies because they usually want things fixed the day before they broke. I also do not have any paperwork that the person signs before they give me or let me work on, or I take away their system. At the very beginning, I started to use QuickBooks Online, thinking I could use their system to fill out invoices and print it out on their printer before I left. I believe I've only done that about 5 times, and 3 of them were in the first year. Instead, whether the customer asked for it or not, if I had an email address for them, they got an invoice when I entered the sales into QuickBooks. This year, I've started using Repair Shopper. It integrates with QuickBooks, and I send out a lot of emails to interact with customers, including follow-up messages on the invoice. I now state, if I provided you with a physical item, I have done so without any warranty of any kind. I carry some supplies with me for the convenience of having them on hand when needed. I do not have a reseller's license, so I buy the items at cost and provide them to you at the same price. The item may not have been available to me may have been available to me for a long time before being presented to you. Other than that, I have no disclaimers. The reason I'm writing is to ask, how many times has the disclaimers, release notes, insurance saved you? Did you get all that, Marvin?
I think I got a summary of it. So I guess the short answer is I can't put a number on how many times having something in writing has saved me.
Okay.
But I'll say it's a good bit, because I mean, I've had people, in my cases, I'm thinking more of when somebody claimed that I didn't do the work when I did. And I make sure that when I do my invoices, we pretty much list out everything that's done to a station, whether it's cleanup, whether it's virus removal, installing software, removing software, running a inventory sheet on the computer beforehand. So that's been the bulk of it. The other stuff has been, I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess it's been so long since it's happened, I just can't remember any situations. I haven't had that happen to me in such a long time now.
Okay. Well, point check on I always have somebody fill out, the paperwork, whether we're doing I'm managing some services for them, or I'm doing a break fix or whatever. And it's just basically what is covered, what is not covered, what I'm responsible for, what I'm not responsible for. And basically bottom line is it pretty much says I'm not responsible for anything. That's my shtick. And it's just to cover me. Not that I'm never going to do anything malicious to the customer because I want them to be taken care of. But weird things happen with electronics and they're not all controllable. And I'll give you an example. I had to be a little concerned because one of my managed service customers, who I manage his services through antivirus and different things, actually got a CryptoWall 3.0, which I was talking about earlier. And he didn't have a real backup. He had some things on a Western Digital, but wasn't sure what he had. And, first thing, obviously people are going to say, well, I thought this was supposed to prevent. So, and I explained to him in a nice way. Well, I said, I said, it's the best preventative maintenance you're going to get, but it's not 100% effective. It all depends on, sometimes when we click on things or we allow things to, start in our systems, then there's not a whole lot you can do, especially with some of these 0 days, right? So with that being said, I had to go back and look at my paperwork because I hadn't looked at it in a long time. And I was like, okay, I went through it and I go, okay, it is covered. I don't cover data recovery. I don't cover backups. That's not part of the, and I wanted to make sure that I had that stuff in there so that as I was providing a service, they knew what was covered and what wasn't. And that way we could always go back to the paperwork. And what I always do is I have them fill out a hard copy, sign it in ink most of the time, unless I'm doing it remotely. But most of my customers are face to face. And then what I'll do is I'll go and take that copy and I'll print off a copy from them on my printer using the scanner. And then I give them that copy so that they have a copy of what to expect. I have a copy that I keep in a file folder just in case, if it ever came up to a lawsuit or something like that. Now, with that being said, I, in particular, at this point, don't have insurance either. And because when I first started my business like 5 years ago, like legitimately, I went and checked into insurance and it was like really, really expensive. And I'm like, I just wasn't doing enough work at the time. So I've kind of gone back and forth and I'm understanding that it's not as expensive as it used to be. And it might be something that, just to kind of protect yourself in case things happen. Now, what do you think about that as far as, insurance and stuff, Marvin? Oh, and Marvin's off screen. I think Marvin is taking a hiatus. Okay. Anyways, he should be back with us. But yeah, I don't, at this point, I didn't see the need for the amount of work that I was doing that I needed insurance. I'm sure there gets a point, you got to have something where it's a, if somebody's coming to your house, slip and fall and all that kind of stuff. There's things you can do to kind of protect yourself. So in my particular case, I haven't ever had anything that I was, that's protected me. Now, what I've had situations where I didn't have anything in my paperwork that said, hey, if you don't pay me within a certain amount of time, I get to keep your equipment and sell it to, try to make the money back and all that kind of stuff. And I had one customer that did that to me. I didn't have that in there. So after that situation happened, I learned that I needed to add that into my paperwork. Now, I would suggest personally that you do at least some sort of paperwork. And, you carry, you have them sign something, whether it's digitally or, print it out like I do. Have something that people can, at least they know. A lot of times what I get is when I have them fill out their, number one, it's great for them to fill out their information so I get it. They can fill it out and I can put it into my tracking system later. And then when they flip it over on the back, they'll sit there and they'll look at it. And, I'll say, read the back and sign the bottom. And 9 times out of 10, they'll flip it over and go, do I have to read all this? And I say, well, no, you don't. And I said, it's basically just saying what I'm responsible for, what I'm not responsible for, that type of thing. And it's giving me permission to work on your machine. I'm going to do the best that I can to make sure your machine is taken care of and we're not going to lose any data and stuff like that. But things do happen sometimes. So I'm going to take the utmost care, but I'm basically not responsible if something does, if you bring it into me and don't have a backup. And I will tell you, a lot of times you take it to a big box store and that big box store will have, they'll basically, hey, do you have a backup? And they don't even care. They're like, if you say no, well, all we're going to do is, wipe and reload the system or whatever, and your stuff's gone. At least with a lot of us, smaller technician shops, we're basically taking the time to, basically make sure that the data is backed up and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, Marvin, I know we lost you there for a sec, but we're talking about insurance.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of that, and what I was doing, we have a call that came in, so that's on hold, waiting for us.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I was going to respond. You were talking about, what we're held responsible for and whatnot, and think I needed to just let, by disclaimer from my perspective, is most of my customers are clients that I've had for forever. So I really don't run into a lot of situations where they're going to worry about their stuff. Although, if we're responsible for their backup, we are, only responsible for making sure that the backup runs. but I'm not responsible for making sure that their backup media is workable every single day.
Right.
Every now and then we'll go in and do a check and make sure, but they know that they're responsible for their backup. We'll make sure it runs, make sure we get an email every night saying that yes, it backed up or no, it didn't. But we're not held responsible for that. But in terms of repairs, and I just had one on Friday where a customer got hit with a power surge, and it's a big problem down here in Florida with lightning and stuff.
Okay.
So he's got a station. It's a station that connects to a large printing plotter for a sign company, and it's the only station that has this software. And so his computer wouldn't boot after all that, and not part of the backup, not anything that we manage, but it's that situation where you talked about where they want to make sure that their data is safe. And basically the discussion that I had with him is, do you have a backup? He's like, nope. And I said, well, I'm going to give you the worst case scenario. You're not going to have anything. and I just stated right there.
Right.
And that's how we always like to start out, by just giving the worst case scenario. It's broke, and if we can't fix it, you're not getting anything back.
Right.
And luckily, it was just a blown video card, so he's gonna have all this stuff and all his data. But but they know going in, we're not going to be responsible for anything, especially if it's a lightning hit in Florida.
Right. Yeah. Well, and let's be honest too. Now, these companies could actually pay for you to actually come in and check their backups daily.
Yes.
But what ends up happening is these companies a lot of times are cheap, and they don't want to pay for that extra.
Right.
Somebody to come in and physically check those things, which is understandable. But then there comes this somebody at that company is going to be responsible for doing those checks.
Yeah.
So. Now, as far as you said we had a phone call?
Yes, Swift 110.
Okay.
Is hanging on the line for us. He's on hold.
All right, we want to pull him in. And
got him?
Nope. Nothing's coming through. That's odd.
Call is on hold.
You might have to engage the call again and just click on me to add it. It's these electronic things. They become interesting. All right.
There you are. Got it.
Okay, I got it now. Hey, welcome to Podnutz Computer Repair Podcast. How you doing? Well, I don't hear anything. Hold on one sec. No, everything's on there. I guess we should have tested. It's been a while since we've tested this. Last time we tested it worked. No, everything's set up right. It's weird. For some reason, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can take it.
Okay. Yeah, I've got you. Yeah. Are you on a cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. What was your question? We can't.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark,
we're getting a lot of feedback.
Can you mute your Skype call there?
It's muted.
Now, I do notice that. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I noticed. I have the laptop that I'm on is a Lenovo X201, and I noticed that my Wi-Fi will cut me out of IRC quite a bit, and it does that pretty often, no matter where I am location-wise.
Oh, okay. Now, so it's just kicking you off of IRC on the wireless.
Yeah,
That's
they'll do it over and over.
huh. Now, are you using IRC web client IRC, or are you using a standalone IRC client?
XChat.
That's odd. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's any problems with XChat and Wi-Fi signal, and yeah, that's kind of a weird issue. I mean, it could be something just with XChat itself. I've used a couple different standalone IRC clients, and some of them definitely do work better than others, and especially when they update them, sometimes they don't work the same way that they used to. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I use XChat.
Yeah, that's yeah. I'm not real familiar with the whole IRC thing, and exactly what could be causing that as far as Marvin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I look at that as a basically a software issue.
Yeah, and I do know that IRC did have issues a while back. And when I say a while back, the last I heard was 2011. And they did have a lot of wireless issues back then.
Okay.
So it could be something where, maybe there was an update recently and or it might be the particular router. But I do know that IRC did have issues with Wi-Fi, 2011. And I don't know specifically why. But that's, I don't do enough IRC to really know.
Yeah, I do IRC Sundays, and yeah, pretty much that's it. Just on this show. So yeah, I would just you can either try a different IRC client, or even use a web-based client to see if you're getting the same types of things, and then that would narrow it down whether or not it's the client itself that's causing a problem with that particular laptop. In Wi-Fi.
Thinking it's that Wi-Fi card.
Yeah, it could be, but you don't have any other issues with the Wi-Fi, right? I mean, you're connected to the internet, and you don't have it kicking you off there, do you? Oh, you still there?
Yeah.
So you don't have it kicking you off the internet or anything like that, do you? You just have it kicking your IRC client is just losing its connection?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not
able to get a good connection.
Real well. Yeah, we don't have a good connection for some reason. You're barely coming through. Yeah.
Swift, why don't we do this? Why don't, if you get to a better spot, maybe call us back, or if you do some troubleshooting with another IRC, client, just maybe give us a call back next week and give us an update.
Yeah.
But the connection's bad, so we're gonna have to hang up here. Sorry about that.
All right. Yeah, talking about software issues, though, I'll tell you what, software can be a hard thing to troubleshoot, right? Because we don't know, we look at all these different configurations of models of laptops, of desktops. Some we put together, some are built by, Dell, HP, or whatever. And then, it's funny because customers, a lot of times, especially business customers, will expect us to come in and know exactly how QuickBooks works and exactly how Peachtree works, and, all these different accounting softwares, or, why is this not working on this particular computer? And it's sometimes that stuff is really hard to troubleshoot, because you're like, is it the computer? Is it the program? Is it an update that happened in a program, whether it be Windows or whatever? Yeah, those are sometimes one of the most difficult things, I think, to diagnose. And everybody wants you to be the expert, right? Because,
of course,
we work with all these pieces of software. Now, IRC, I mean, I do a little bit, but yeah, a lot of stuff. I learned enough about Peachtree to be dangerous as an accounting software. I know absolutely nothing about QuickBooks. So, you know, if you were to ask me, I'd be like, I'm going to hire somebody else that's going to give you that info.
Well, most people are one or the other, you know. It's like, you know, it's like Apple and Microsoft. You know, you just really don't mix the two together.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I mean, are people still using Peachtree nowadays? I don't even know.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I had a Peachtree issue a couple of months ago where it really wasn't a Peachtree issue. It was more a pervasive database issue. And they had several different products that were using the same database engine. So one of them, it was, I believe it was Peachtree, Time Slips, and one other. And they updated their Peachtree. Oh, I remember it was ProDoc, which is a forms program for law offices.
Okay.
And that ProDoc program stopped working. And it took about a month for somebody to actually realize that the underlying database was the same for all three programs. And since we updated the one, it broke the other program.
Oh.
And they don't have a fix for it.
You know, and that's always a problem, right? Because, you know, a lot of times, if there's no fix for it, and you know what? And unfortunately, some of this stuff doesn't impact everybody. So it's like, it's how hard are they going to look for the fix to be able to make sure that it's working 100% across the board? I mean,
they're not going to look at all, because the program that we were dealing with that had the problem only looked at their program. And they said, well, that must be you. And it was one of those things where the customer didn't realize how big of a problem it was. So, you know, they mentioned one problem 1 week, and then we kind of got to the next week and they mentioned another problem. And so by about the third week, I finally said, okay, this is obviously an issue. We need to dig into it. So I actually got on, looked at all the stuff, and that's how I realized, oh, wait a minute, you're all using the same database. So I was the one that had to tell the technician, here's the issue that I believe it is. Can you verify that for me? He's like, oh, yeah. And then he's like, okay, so uninstall this and reinstall that and you should be fine. So we did that, didn't work. And so he literally had to call back and get another level of technician. And that technician's like, oh, that'll never work.
right.
And I'm like, well, why did your guy tell us it would work? Oh, well, they don't know. I'm like, well, maybe you should send out some documentation to the rest of your techs.
You know, I can't remember if I told this story about my Cronus issue when I had a hard drive die on me, and it basically, you know, messed up my operating system. And I basically went, you know, I went back, took in a Cronus image. You know, I got everything back up and running. That wasn't a problem, except that I could not see inside of my Cronus files. It was backing up and it was doing what it was supposed to do, but I couldn't actually look inside them like I normally had been able to. And I had called tech support, and they gave me obviously level 1, and they spent an hour on my computer, remoted in, and looking at different things and trying all the stuff that I had already tried, because, you know, I wouldn't waste my time in calling them if I hadn't tried the basics. Get that, Acronis? The basics. Okay. So anyways, and I did explain to him in my email when I sent it out. It was a very thorough email. I explained to him, I'm a technician. I work on this stuff all the time. I don't know, you know, this software per se, but here's what it was doing before. Here's what it's doing now. And I need some sort of fix. And I said, I also told them, I said, it looks like you've been having this problem since version 2008. And every year thereafter with a small group of people, and nobody can figure it out, right? So I use their uninstall tool, which an uninstall tool from the company that makes the software should pull everything out of the registry and everything else, right? Wrong answer.
Who cleans the registry?
Well, exactly. So, but why make an uninstall tool unless you already are having problems? So anyway, this uninstall tool did not do what it needed to do. So they moved me up to the next tech level, and I basically had to, they called me and they spent another hour on my machine and still couldn't figure it out. They remoted in. He manually went through the registry using some weird program I'd never seen it before. And I'm like going, yeah, we could have done that in regedit. I don't get it, but whatever. So they're pulling all this stuff out. Still didn't work. He's like, well, so he downloaded a 9 gigabyte information file from inside of Acronis. And I'm like going, 9 gigs of what? What information would be there that you would be able to tell what's going on? And basically, once they got the information, the next level tech said, "Oh yeah, your installation's messed up, and we need to figure out what's going on." And so at that point, I was like, whatever. So I went back in and I went and I said, well, let me try something that I hadn't tried before, and I put Revo installer in there, and I went to the hardest thing it could and looked deep down in the registry, and I saw the 2 keys that they had missed the first time through, and I'm like, oh. So I wiped everything out, reinstalled Acronis. It worked. So I called them, or I emailed them back and said, hey, don't worry about it. I already fixed it. Whatever. Thanks. Have a great day. And they had the
audacity.
The audacity to email me back and go, hey, how did you fix it so that we can let other people know? We can let our technicians know how to fix this. And I'm like, so I was like, all right. And so I went through the whole process. That I went and used Revo Installer, and I said, here's a good thing. I said, why don't you take a look at Revo Installer and see what it actually uninstalls as far as registry keys and stuff, and then why don't your department, your code department, go in and basically, put that in your uninstall tool, so you don't have to use a third-party tool to do what your uninstall tool should have been built for in the first place. And it's basically what I said. And have a nice day.
Or do that so that a customer doesn't have to spend 2 to 3 hours for tech support.
Yeah. It's really 2 hours. They couldn't figure it out. I took like 5 minutes and figured it out myself. And, and that's honestly, that's what we do because we're troubleshooters. So, anyways, if anybody has a problem with the Acronis where you can't see inside, Revo Installer, man, just use that. You should be fine. All right. That was the last email for the day. Let's go back into, did you want to say anything else about now obviously, do you have insurance, Marvin?
Well, I have insurance, but my insurance is the business liability insurance.
Okay.
And we just added errors and omissions. And to be honest, I actually haven't had to use it.
Okay.
But I got it because one of our clients demanded that we get it. And so I said, okay. Basically, it was a cable company that they were doing my cable work, but then they wanted me to come in and run their tech department. Long story.
Okay.
So I came in to run their tech department and basically support their clients.
Okay.
Under their name. So I had to have a.
So they wanted you to have that insurance in case something happened under their name. They were protected.
Right.
I got it. Okay.
So I did that. And then we started getting, when I started doing bids for some projects, all of them wanted to know if you had some sort of business liability insurance. So I've kept it just in case somebody asked about it. Okay. And I can say, yes, I have it. The only thing I would really say to techs is that's probably something that if you've got a store that people come to or something like that, you probably should have it because you're just dealing with so much volume and people inside your shop, and somebody comes in and drops a computer on your desk and claims that you dropped it, that's why it's not working.
Right.
That sort of stuff.
Sure.
Or you drop it, walking back to the tech room or something like that. That's a good reason to have it. The other reason to have it now is the reason we got the errors and omissions added is because we're working with the medical field with their HIPAA.
Okay.
And so we're basically putting together all our business agreements with them as to what we're responsible for in terms of whether or not they meet their HIPAA requirements. And so there's so many things that they're responsible for, so many things that we're responsible for, so that if they get sued, we can have our insurance that says, nope, this is what we were responsible for in terms of keeping their security. And if there's a breach, I have to be able to go through the logs and show that, okay, the breach was because this user didn't lock their workstation, or this password got, told to somebody who shouldn't have had it, and those types of things.
Okay.
So, but we're going to keep it, and I would suggest that all techs basically at some point get it. It's not that expensive.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think it is, and it all depends too. I mean, another thing, if you're an on-site tech, I think if you're dealing with businesses or even going into residential homes, a lot of the time, I think it's probably still a good idea. Again, it's one of those things. I don't wear my seatbelt because I'm, concerned that I'm going to get in an accident. It's just a precaution. And insurance is kind of the same way. And it's part of a cost of doing your business. I haven't looked at it in a while, and it's one of the things that's on my list to relook at again and make sure that I'm covered for the things that I do. All right. I think that answers that email. So again, thank you, Anonymous, for the email. Appreciate it. And I hope that helps you out. But yeah, definitely get the paperwork going on that. And at least have them sign something that's going to protect you on a lot of things. Even not if it doesn't protect you, even in a lawsuit, because nothing's bulletproof, right? Nothing's 100%. But here's the thing: if you set the expectations by going here's what I cover, here's what I don't, here's what you're signing, you tend to get less pushback from people when something does happen. And the other thing too, if you're getting a bunch of shady characters that are coming in and, using your services and you just feel like they're shady, don't do business with them, raise your prices and, move on from there. So anyways, all right. So let's go into our topic that we were talking about earlier, Marvin, and that is outstanding invoices. What is your escalation process for past due invoices? And you would probably, I've never had to do this in this business. I know what it is for rentals, but not for this business. So anyways, what types of things do you have to go through in this arena?
Outstanding invoices. Well, we have a very simple process. And basically, most of our clients are invoiced due on receipt. So whether I give them an invoice at the time that I'm on site, or if I send them an invoice afterwards. And the reason I do it afterwards is, again, a lot of my clients are businesses, and I may do stuff for them on a regular basis. So I may invoice them once a month. I may invoice them for a project that maybe it took me 2 or 3 days. So I'll invoice them at the end of the week or after a server install. And basically it's all due on receipt.
Okay.
Now, in my mind, due on receipt means pay me as soon as you freaking can. But we do give them basically a 30 days grace.
Okay. All right.
And that's how most business clients will take it. And in their mind, they'll put it into their thing, they'll say net 30 or whatever they do.
Sure.
And again, since most of my clients are long-term, I'm not as worried about it. If I get it, I'm not freaking out at day 20, whether or not they're going to pay or not. And I'm not freaking out at day 35 if they haven't paid or not. Now, what we do is on sometime in between 30 and 40, we'll send out a first reminder. And that is key in the very beginning with the customer, is to really get those reminders out. And it's just a nice reminder saying, hey, you've got an outstanding invoice, please pay.
Right.
At 60 days, it then becomes a second reminder. And this one's a little more stern, as we haven't received payment. Is there something wrong? Do we need to have a discussion? Do we need to extend, terms? And please let us know. Please get in touch with us so that, we don't have any issues going forward if you need service. Right. Because bottom line is, once they hit 60 days, we're not going to do any other business with them until they get their invoice current.
Sure.
And then at 90 days, they go to collections.
Okay.
As simple as that.
Okay. And that's really so. But the key thing you said here was that you're talking about ongoing customers that you work with all the time.
For me, yes. We have had similar issues with. They're not residential customers. Most of them have been employees of the businesses that we work with, where they're asked us to come work on their home computer. And most of them have been pretty good, because They obviously don't want to have an issue get back to their work that they called us out to do something and they didn't pay or anything like that. So most of them have been fine. I have had a couple of people that paid the first time but didn't pay the second time. And most of the time those bills were like $100 and, or less. And I just say, look, don't call me again to come to your homework.
Right.
And I just, for that type of money, I'm not going to go, I'll still say, look, you owe me some money. You're going to pay or not? Oh,
Right.
yeah, I'm going to pay. Yeah. And then they never do.
Sure.
So, but for actual business customers, they know that they need to pay or we're going to send them to collections. And I don't really have a philosophy beyond that. I don't have a whole scripted, series of events, except that they're going to get a letter at 30, a letter at 60. Now, with some of my customers that have been good customers, I may call them and say, hey, anything I should know? Do we have any? Or I've got customers that call me now and say, hey, look, can we have an extra, can I pay you next week? And they'll call up and say, I've got an issue. I've even got customers that if I haven't sent an invoice in a week, they're calling me going, don't you want to get paid?
That's good. That's a great customer to have.
But in terms of outstanding invoices, that's just the simple philosophy I've always employed: 30, 60, 90 collections. And I've only had to do that 3 times in 18 years.
Yeah, so it's not one of those things that happens all the time, but when it does. Now, so what's the process? Have you actually had to go to any type of court case to collect, or do you have a company that does that for you?
I used a company, and it's basically Dun & Bradstreet, and they have a collection division. And we used to use Dun & Bradstreet to do finance checks on customers before we actually did work with them.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Which I really don't recommend that unless you're, doing a huge project and you're worried about getting paid.
Right.
It's really not worth, you can do your own checks and see whether or not, somebody's, trustworthy or not in terms of paying on time. But we did used to do that. But I use Dun & Bradstreet, and it's very simple. You just call them up and send in your information. You do have to send documentation that, of the invoice, that you did try to contact them. And basically for a fee, they will then take over and collect. And if they don't, they do all the things that are necessary in terms of legally, putting a mark on their credit rating and stuff like that. And those 3 times when we've done that, we've not had any other issues beyond that. They've either paid, right away or came up with, a payment arrangement. But we never had to go to court. We never had to really follow up beyond that.
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, that's it. It's not one of those things. I would say in the in the rental market, it happens a lot more frequently. As a matter of fact, I used to have a retainer or a lawyer on a retainer to deal with those. So, yeah, it's a little different. But yeah, I think most people really, they're not calling you out unless they really want to pay. And, it's not like these businesses, I mean, obviously they're not moving shop 9 times out of 10. So it's not like they're going anywhere. There have been times where, somebody had wondered because nobody had gotten the email with the invoice or whatever. And, I called them back, a couple weeks later and they said, yeah, I never got it. Well, let me send it over again. They got it. Whether they did or not, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But they paid me right away and it was no big deal. Now I will say for a lot of smaller businesses, I do basically same thing. It's due upon receipt, and I do not do anywhere near a 30-day net. It's more like 7. But a lot of mine are also one-off customers. So I may have, maybe I've done work for them before, maybe I haven't. Could be a first time, but I want to get paid as soon as I can. Sometimes even for first-time business customers, I'll take a credit card right on the spot, and it just depends on the type of business. So it depends. But yeah, 3 times in 18 years to go to collections, that's not a whole lot. So I mean,
no, and really, and it's funny because the very first time it happened, it was literally because the parent company was actually supposed to pay, and the company that I did the work for, it was a mess. I mean, they moved and then they did this, and I don't know if they went out of business or if they were shaped, but basically we went after the parent company, and the parent company said, "Oh, we didn't know about this," and
That's crazy.
so, but they paid. And then the last time I had to do was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was funny because how can I say this delicately? The accounting person at the office, when we sent them to collections, actually called our office and said that, "Why did you send us collections? The person that called us was mean."
Was it you calling?
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, oh my gosh.
But they were upset that we sent them to collections and that the person was mean to them on the phone. And I'm like, well, look, if you had just paid, we wouldn't have had to do that.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry that they yelled at you, but by the way, are you sending a check?
Right, exactly. Can I have my money now? Because
Right.
I missed a meal last week and I need to catch up on that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, never ending story. All right, so that's so outstanding invoices. What do you do? And I think those are good rules. You just have to set in mind. And also, I will tell you this: is you need to have that in writing on the documentation that you're having. Especially first time customers. I'm getting a little loose in the game here, where a lot of times my repeat customers, they're already in my database. I've got all the information and stuff like that. I may or may not have them sign a new sheet. I've got an original one on file, and basically I'm working on the same machines and stuff like that. So, I'm not worried about it as much, and neither are my customers. So I think that's kind of the divide. For a first time customer, absolutely you want to have them sign something. For ones that you've been working with for a while, it's probably not as important because you've already built that rapport, and you guys are working well together, and it's working. So they're paying you, and it's not an issue. That's just kind of my rule of thumb I made up, probably here lately.
Yeah, and you have to establish yourself as a business to the other people, and let them not just think that, hey, you're coming over as a friend. Why do I gotta? You've really got to come forward and say, look, this is my business, and for services rendered, I do expect payment. And here's the process, and here are the repercussions. And like you said, it's got to be written, either whether it's on the invoice or whether on the, intake sheet, if you're having them sign an intake sheet. But yeah, it has to be spelled out that payment is due at this time, and if not, we'll be coming after you.
Right. Exactly. And I like your rule too. And I've kind of got the same rule. You're talking about doing work for customers that, maybe work for XYZ company, but they want their home PC fixed. You go out, you do the job. And yet most of the time you're talking about, less than a couple $100. And you know what? A lot of times, is that really worth it to go after? In my personal opinion, no, because it would take me more time and effort to go after them than just to go, hey, I'm not going to do work for you anymore. Now, if they work for one of the companies that I'm servicing, that may or may not come up in the conversation.
Yeah, that's a tough line. And usually my response is, if their name is on the business, then I'll do it.
Okay.
If it's the owner, if it's a partner of a law firm, I'm going to go do it.
Sure.
And for the most part, they usually have a setup where they're like, hey, bill me personally for this, or bill the firm or bill the office for this.
Right.
And I really don't have to worry about it. But it is always the employees that, hey, you're our computer guy. Can't you come fix this? And what I used to do, I haven't had to do this in a while, but I will tell them, I don't really think you want to pay me as much as it's going to cost for me to show up.
Right.
Because most employees don't have an idea of what the business is paying for IT support.
Right.
And I just let them know, look, I'm not going to be that $50, $60 tech. I mean, it's going to be about $150 for me to show up. And as soon as they hear that, they're like, oh, okay, well, let me Let me go call Geek Squad or something.
Oh yeah, they're going to be any cheaper, right?
But in terms of employees, really the focus, what I try to do is that I really don't want to do somebody's personal stuff because I don't want it to interfere with the business.
Right.
And,
That's a good point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes it's like, we look at sometimes when we don't do things like that or extra things, we're leaving money on the table. But you've got to look at what's actually bringing you in money to your business. And if something is going to pull away from that, maybe it's not something you need to entertain. And you just kind of go, no, you know what? Hey, call a local guy, or here's another person I can send you to that does more of the residential type work, because
Right.
I've got plenty that I'm doing here just to keep up with all the businesses I have.
That, or say, look, I'm a business tech. I don't really know home stuff that well. And most time people understand that.
Even though you're lying, but yeah, okay.
I'm a server guy. I have no idea what that.
Yeah, I only work on it. It's the same thing. But anyways.
Candy Crush, what's that?
I will not work on your tablet, though, I'll tell you that. iPad, what is that? Anyways. All right. So we're at, let's see, we're at 5:02. Let's touch on one more small topic. And this is something from a business standpoint you can probably deal with, especially working in law firms and we talked about a little bit about HIPAA compliance, but network security for small businesses. How many people are really taking advantage of making sure that their networks are secure, in the businesses that you're taking care of?
You mean how many say they're serious, or how many are really serious?
Well, both, I guess. I mean, so when you go in and you say, okay, hey, you've got some holes in your network, and I understand you're either a law office, which deals with money, or you're a doctor's office, which deals with people's records. Are people still trying to be chintzy as far as not, doing the right things that you're suggesting when it comes to network security?
I can answer that absolutely with a perfect example of what I'm going through right now. In general, people are serious up to a point. And that point either has to do with how much does it cost, or how much is going to keep me from doing what I really want to do with my computer. Meaning, if it costs too much to do it, well, maybe we'll just, not worry about it until we have an issue. And that's probably the bulk of people. The other side is where people don't want to deal with security. They don't want it to infringe upon their being able to be on social media or look at porn, or, it's that sort of thing. The biggest thing I am dealing with right now is I have a medical client that wants me to put together their HIPAA compliance documentation and have it signed off saying that they're HIPAA compliant, and want it dated from last year. And I'm like, I can't do that.
Right.
Why not? Because you're not HIPAA compliant. And the reason they're not HIPAA compliant is they're not using secure mail with all of their employees. And what they did was they didn't want to pay for everybody to have secure mail. So they only paid for, in this case, 7 accounts.
What would secure mail mean?
Well, for them, it means that any email that they send out that has any patient information, social security number, patient ID number, medical information, has to go through a secure portal.
Okay.
To where it's just not regular email. You just don't throw it into Outlook or, a mail client and send it out. It needs to be in a portal where the other recipient has to sign in to a portal to see that mail, so that it never comes off of that server.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they didn't want to pay for everybody to have that because they didn't think they needed it. Well, it turns out they're sending patient information back and forth amongst themselves, thinking that it's secure because they think that it's within the domain.
Oh,
Well, if we're sending it to ourselves, it's not really going out over the internet. And I had to describe to them, no. Everything you send goes out over the internet because you don't have an in-house mail server.
right.
Your mail is going from your office out to a server back into your office. That's not secure. So that was one thing. The other thing that they didn't want to do is they didn't want to lock down their Wi-Fi. And so they had patients that they wanted to be able to give Wi-Fi to while they're sitting in the waiting room. Or if they were sitting in a chair getting a procedure and they were going to be there for 2 or 3 hours, they wanted to basically watch Netflix or Hulu or whatever. But they weren't on separate networks.
Oh,
So I just got finished, separating out their private network from their public network. And they didn't want to do it because it was going to cost too much money to change their routers. They didn't want to lock it down. They don't want to have to change their passwords every, 90 days. They didn't like the fact that for the medical field, for HIPAA, literally you're supposed to have a security procedure set up where if somebody walks away from a workstation, after X number of minutes, that workstation locks so that somebody just can't walk up and start typing on that workstation. So they can't get into the medical management program. They can't get into your email. They can't share email, which is another thing that they're doing where they have medical assistants all using the same email. And I just had to tell the office manager, so this person can't use their personal email anymore and have the rest of the medical assistants look at it. And she's like, well, why not? And I said, so what if the doctor sends her something that is office related about one of the medical assistants that they're not supposed to see? Oh, well, how do we do that?
oh.
I mean, and it's just a matter of a lot of companies, they want to talk big about security. They want to talk big about how technological they are, but it's when they have to change their daily practices and when it costs them money. The secured mail for this firm, I think it's like $200 a month that it's going to cost them to do this.
Okay.
Um,
Which doesn't seem that expensive, really.
It doesn't when you look at it from a standpoint if they get sued.
Right.
They're going to wish they spent that $200 a month.
Right.
But it's just one of those things where they look at all that, well, it's, every time we turn around, you're adding this and it's costing us this. I'm like, it's not me. I'm not Mr. HIPAA.
Right.
You're asking me to help you, and this is what we're trying to do. So now what they've decided to do is they're actually going to hire there are companies out there that will do a HIPAA compliance check. And they'll come in, and it's an outside third party. They're not related to any government entity. They're going to come in one day. I don't know how when they're going to do it or whatever, but they're going to come in and check everything and give them a list of what they need to do to be HIPAA compliant. And that way they're not getting it just from me. They're not getting it just from the internet. They're going to get it from a company that's saying, okay, look, if you don't want to get sued, here's what you have to do.
Right.
And then they really won't have a choice. But other businesses that don't have, the HIPAA compliance or the FINRA compliance for the, financial management, law firms are supposed to have a bunch of stuff as well. But a lot of them they just don't do it. And I really think it's laziness on the text. The text we just get tired of fighting.
Sure. Right.
Saying, you need to do this. You need to do this. Yeah, we'll get to it. Or that's too much money. And, I've got a couple of clients where I've done some stuff. We do lock down the network. We do lock down their Wi-Fi. We've changed some backup procedures because one of the problems I've had with customers where they'll do a backup. And if you use a backup like, what's the one we use? SyncBack that a lot of people use. That's not really a backup. That's just a copy. So if you do a backup to an external drive, somebody takes that external drive, they can get in and see all the information. So the backup itself should actually be password protected or encrypted. So I had to do a big adjustment for a couple of customers with that so that if they lost that external drive or somebody just walked in and took it, they couldn't get into their information. It was a law firm. um, that had an employee take something. They took files home and used their files to pretend it was a big deal, that they were either working for themselves or working for another law attorney, but using this law firm's documentation. And so somebody called them out on it, and they had a big, I don't know what happened, but I mean, they did sue the employee. And but then we had to go back and revisit those types of things. How are employees able to walk out with our data? And I said, well, if you have a thumb drive, you can pretty much do whatever.
Exactly. You ever heard of copy and paste?
Yeah.
So as far as like business, so what would you say is, if you're walking into most of your businesses, how many of those businesses actually have consumer grade routers?
Consumer grade routers, probably half.
Okay. That's about what I would have figured. About 50%. Yeah. And it's, and it's all because, I don't know. It's like convenience over, I would think a lot of times, man, I've told people before, a lot of people right around the 5-year mark, especially with consumer grade routers, will start having problems. And I've done it myself many times where I deal with it for almost 6 months to a year. And then I get to the point where I'm like, going, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to go buy one right now. Forget it. And, I look at some of these businesses like, hey, if you would get something a little more robust that you can control better, it's going to help keep your employees safer. It's going to help keep your business safer. And, and it's probably, these things are made a little bit better. They're going to last a little bit longer.
Right. They're going to have better firewalls. They're going to have more features with, intrusion prevention and gateway virus protection. The biggest problem I'm finding with customers is they're now all getting to the point where they're, tech happy, where, they've learned a little bit of technology, and so they think they can do things themselves. Or they've heard from technicians who are saying, well, you can do this yourselves. You don't really need to hire. So they'll go to the store themselves and buy the cheapest router they can find
to
do the job. And, somebody like me comes in and says, that's not really good for your business. Well, why not? The sales guy said it was.
Sure.
Like,
yeah, and it is a hard battle to fight for us to come in and say, no, here's what you really need. And they're going, well, why is that thing like, $800 and I got this one for $50?
Yeah.
In not understanding the difference. And I guess that's where it's it's our job. And like you said earlier, though, it's hard to keep fighting that fight when they keep going, I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to spend the money. And it's like, really? I mean, they're looking at it as a one-time cost. I look at those things and I go, okay, $800 over, or whatever, it doesn't matter the amount, but $800 over, let's say 5 years. How much money is that really? And so I don't know.
Well, it's not just that, in terms of, the one-time cost for a lot of the, routers, and I'll use SonicWall for a lot of my business customers, and mainly because SonicWall has the annual subscription for the gateway virus protection, the intrusion prevention, the content filtering rules, where we can literally block social media and porn and all that stuff from their employees, but I can open it up for an owner, and that sort of stuff. They don't see the value in that until something happens. Until they're, what was, I forget the name of that one virus that basically would throw all the porn icons on your network shared drives.
Yeah. That was.
And, I had a client that literally, well, how's that happen? I'm like, well, you've got no firewall. You've got no virus protection. You've got nothing. And they were like, well, we need to get it. And I'm like, okay, this is how much it is. I don't care. It's one of those things where when it happens, then it's not an issue of cost. But, they hear the stories of, and I'll be honest with you, and I, hope any techs in the chat or people listening don't take this the wrong way, but we ourselves are part of the problem where, we ourselves are trying to find the cheapest way to do stuff.
I know. No, I've said that for a long time, and you're exactly right. And it's like, and it's kind of, what, a lot of times it's bringing the industry down as a whole, I think, is that, because we're saying here's what you need. Here's the gold standard to keep you the best protected we possibly can. And they go in a company, wow, we just don't have the budget for that. And it's like, they don't have the budget for that, but yet they have budgets for other things that are really not as important, I would say, in a lot of these businesses. And, whether it's, Frappuccinos on Friday or whatever, but the point is, really, you have to lay those out. And it's like, I've often struggled with this. I go, okay, do I go in and take a system that's basically what I would call a Mickey Mouse put together pieces and bits and try to deal with it? Is that worth my time and effort? Or you've got some of these other companies that are going, hey, we're a managed service provider. And guess what? We're going to come in and we're going to soup to nuts. We're going to get you everything from the workstations to the routers to, all the backups and everything. And this is what you have to have in order to work with us. And quite honestly, a lot of us are just trying to make it. So we're like, oh, no, we'll work with the, customer. But a lot of times, man, is it really worth it in the long run? I mean, the hair gets grayer. It gets less sometimes. I mean, why do we keep doing the same things over and over again when we go, yes, maybe we don't go to the gold standard, but maybe we use a silver standard that says, okay, this is going to get us as close as we possibly can and deal with the things that are important to them at that point. Starting off with, I would think the number one thing would be a good, decent router firewall, right?
Well, you would think that, but when you've got these companies that are bringing in their routers that they claim have firewalls in it, that also have Wi-Fi in it, and they'll throw it in there and hook up the network, and people think that they're protected. So a lot of the time, it's the internet service providers that are our biggest combatants as well.
Yeah,
I fight. I mean, that fantastic company I mention all the time that the
Comcastic one.
Comcastic. I battled them a lot because for the business clients, their routers are decent when you're talking about just setting them up and doing a couple of stations. But if I've got a server going in there, or I've got a company that needs to do remote access or a VPN, I will not use their routers. I mean, I just won't. I mean, they can be a gateway. They can be. I can use them as a modem, but they're going to pass through to another router, and whether that's a SonicWall, a Zyxel, a Cisco, Linksys, whatever, their router is not going to be the main line of protection for that business.
Let me ask you this, because it's been a long time, to be honest, since I've worked with any of the business grade routers that are out there in businesses. Now, my understanding has always been that the business routers are actually a lot of times worse than the consumer routers that you can get at your residential home. Is that still true?
No, I don't think that. I think what happens is people get business class routers and then don't set them up.
So they are still to a point where you can configure them to put another router like a SonicWall firewall on that system, and it's easy enough to do.
Well, yeah, as long as the provider will basically do the IP pass-through for you or put it in bridge mode or whatever it is. The problem is you're getting companies where technicians out there, I don't know how to do that.
Oh, Lord, just give me the password. I'll do it.
Right. That sort of thing. It's going to be a bigger battle because they're trying to bring in more services through their stuff. So, they're going to fight us in a lot of areas. Luckily, I haven't had to worry about that because most of my clients are, business clients where I have to tell them, look, we're setting up this, and this, and I can't trust your router to do that. And so they're like, okay, we'll switch it over. But then they say, well, you realize if there's an issue, and I'm like, I don't care. If there's an issue on our end, I'll take care of it.
Right.
But if service is down, you will take care of that.
Yeah.
And
and even from a residential standpoint, I went back to, everybody knows I was having problems with my internet service provider. It was dropping signal just randomly. There was no pattern, no nothing. It would just drop it. I've had it happen on this show a couple times. And basically I had went back to, because we were having problems for like a year or so, I went back to using their equipment, because at least that way I went, okay, it's your equipment, it's your problem, it's your deal, whatever. And so, because the first thing they want to do is if you're using your own equipment, they're like, oh, we're getting a signal there. Everything's working. It is now. But it's like, so it's hard. But now I've gone back to even using Comcast. I went out and bought the best, modem I could, which is just basically a pass-through modem. It's one channel, boom, done. And then it goes into a little bit higher end, consumer grade router for the home. That will get signal everywhere in my house. And that's worked fine for me. And then if something starts to go wrong with that, I've got to troubleshoot those two items. And that's part of what I do. So I went back to doing my own thing again, where, when I was having problems, I'd kind of push it back on them. And I will tell you, it still didn't help me, because they still wanted to blame it on, house ground, this, that, or the other. And I was still fighting to try to get a problem that they couldn't figure out fixed.
Yeah. Residentials, I think, is always going to be the hardest. Comcast has really gotten better on the business side, but there's really not much difference between commercial and residential. The only real difference is the support numbers. You just get a different support department, but the equipment is pretty much the same. So while I am dealing with a lot more Comcast in business, they're better on the business side. Most of my clients, we are using, a different type of provider, because they're getting either T1 or fiber connections. So they're using, a Windstream, a Level 3, an AT&T sort of thing. And those are the companies that are much more in tune with businesses to allow the pass through and configure, the higher end routers and do all that stuff.
Now, from a business standpoint, could you use an off the shelf, surfboard modem for bringing in a business line, or do you have to have that business modem in order to have that business line coming into, XYZ business?
For those providers that I mentioned, you have to use their stuff.
Okay. And I guess that would be the only difference. So in residential, you can go out, buy one and use one in your home, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, residential, you can do a lot of BYOD, bring your own device.
Okay.
Smaller businesses, I used to do that when we did all the DSL connections.
Yeah.
I would not use their DSL modem / routers. I would purchase my own and do that. Once we started going to the T1 connections and the fiber, I pretty much would allow them to use their devices for the actual service, but then we brought in a router behind that we would configure as the gateway. And mainly that was because of, if I needed to do port forwarding, remote connections or anything like that, I didn't want to have to rely on their tech department to do that.
Right. Yeah, the other reason that I'm not using the Comcast modem / router is because I didn't want the free Comcast Wi-Fi. So that was one way to avoid that.
One that they tell you can turn off, but
right. I didn't want to trust that, so that's why I have my own device. I'm not worried about. I don't have Comcast Wi-Fi coming out of my house.
Right.
But I could gladly use it anywhere I go, because most people do.
Yeah. I think a lot of companies are going to start doing that.
Yeah.
Bright House, I think, does it.
Do they really? Oh, gosh. It's like, come on. Okay, how many places can Bright House actually be in? For someone like Comcast or Time Warner or someone, I get that. But some of these other, smaller companies, really? You have that many customers that, they're just traveling around in their own city, by their homes, they're going to get, wireless?
Well, if you get a company like Bright House is all over Orlando, Orange County. And they're doing both business and residential. So, I think they're going to start to get pretty big in terms of regional. But yeah, most of the small companies, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. But from somebody like Comcast, I mean, Comcast is trying to take over they're trying to be the Microsoft, and the Google of internet service providers. They're just,
They about are, aren't they?
well, yeah. As soon as the official Comcast Time Warner,
Yeah.
takeover happens, and then basically they'll probably take over, what is it, NBC Universal or whoever they're going after next.
I can't figure it out. Just keep feeding me on my TV shows and I'll be happy. Anyways.
Yeah, but please lower that monthly cost. Jeez.
Oh, I'm telling you. I know I've got here in November, I've got a call and, they'll probably raise my rates and I'm going to call and, argue with them and tell them to take, everything off and they'll give me another deal and we'll go on from there. So
I would go down to the most basic service if the wife would not, she's got to have HBO, she's got to have on demand, she's got to have. I'm like, well, we can have on demand with Hulu and Netflix. It's the same thing.
I will tell you, I'm really getting a lot out of the on demand for Comcast.
Yeah.
I'm almost getting sucked in, man. It's bad. I'm gonna be like an addict in a couple months if I cut that off. So.
Yeah, I can't say. I mean, it is nice. I mean, my nephew's here visiting, so in his room, I sent him into his room. He's got the on-demand going.
Yep, it's a nice feature, and it's it's like $5 a month or whatever. So, anyways, all right. Well, I think we've covered a lot of good subjects and good things for today. So, Marvin, I appreciate you coming out on the show. And where can people find you and maybe get some more information, or even send you an email to talk to you?
Well, soon. There will be a new website.
Oh, you're lying.
mbsystems.net, the new and improved. And on there, you will find all my information for LinkedIn, for Google Plus, and Facebook.
I'm going to tell you what. As soon as that website goes live, I'm going to copy some of your things off there and put it on my website. All right.
So, mbsystems.net and MB Systems Inc. here in the chat, Uncle Marv at some of the other chats.
All right. Very cool. Well, again, appreciate it. And great show again. We do Podnutz Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/live. Check us out there. We'd love if you guys would watch and join in on a conversation by hanging out in the chat room or just calling in live like Swift 110 did. And we also have on-demand audio and video, always available after the fact over at podnutz.com and my YouTube channel, Podnutz Live Show for Computer Repair Techs. You guys can find me on the Google Plus at Jeffery Halash or Twitter at TechNutPC. And if you're a computer tech and you would like to be a guest on Podnutz Daily, it doesn't matter how many years of experience you have or don't have, we can talk about your business and some of the things you're doing. Send me an email to podnutzdaily@podnutz.com. You guys can also email questions and feedback for this show to podnutz@podnutz.com. You guys can leave a voicemail at the call-in number for 1-888-697-0162. And if you guys could do us a favor, all of you that use iTunes, and I know there's some of you out there, please leave us a rating and review over on iTunes. Let more people know about us. You guys can also help support the Podnutz Network. The next time you're shopping at Amazon, go to podnutz.com/Amazon. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast. Yeah, very cool. Excellent show.
All right.
Now we're just kind of chilling. Let's see what's in the chat room for.
The chat's been awfully busy. I haven't.
It's scrolling by. I keep looking up at it, and I'm like, what's going on?
Well, it looks like John's dominating the responses there.
All right. Talking about drive booster. Interest. Cool. Let's see.
Wow. What is there's I responded. So somebody earlier in the chat when we first started was asking about my office here, and I responded with the storage containers there. And by the way, I didn't mean to be a
oh, you were pimping. I was almost
I did not mean to do that, but
yeah.
Well, I'm using the banner because I'm going to have an MB Systems banner that we're going to have about that size, and so that's what I was using to show. I've got my sign guy who's going to make me some banners and some marketing material and all that stuff. There's stuff coming. Trust me.
Listen, dude, next time you're on a show, just you take that banner and I want you to wear like a cape, from like Rocky, man, where you're just kind of.
I'm gonna have it. I'm gonna have it all in the back. It's gonna be like a green, it's like a green wall. It's gonna be MB Systems all over the place.
Oh man, what are the containers up on the shelf there?
They're those real storage containers that basically
CDs, right?
Huh?
For CDs?
Well, I've got them for CDs, but I've also got them labeled. I've got the smaller ones for memory sticks, but I've got them all over the place. I buy bigger ones when I take my software bags for customers, and I'll put them in bags like these and label them.
Oh, nice.
And then I'll just stick them inside the box, and so that way they have a box of life that I leave them with all their software, and it's all labeled and stuff.
Nice.
But I got the clear ones, so you can just kind of see in, my 4 meg sticks, 2 meg sticks, server sticks.
Okay.
All that stuff.
Cool. Hey, I'm just looking at John D said he did sign up for the zombie night. Appreciate that, John. Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. How about you, Marvin? Did you sign up yet?
I did not.
Are you going to do it?
No, because I actually have some people in Chicago that I'm trying to schedule visits with that are not tech related. Some of them are old college friends, and
okay, cool.
So I'm trying to squeeze all that in as well. Gotcha.
Yep, busy time. I hear you. Very cool. Yeah, somebody was talking about Snappy Driver Installer. Have you used that?
I have not.
I've used it a couple times. It's one of those weird things, man. It's like, when it comes to driver installers, the only thing I actually need like an offline driver installer for is usually, the Ethernet port on a laptop or desktop. And, 50% of the time Windows normally has it anyways, but the other 50%, especially on OEM machines for whatever reason, they don't. So, I might have to, I'll throw, I've used Snappy Driver Installer, or I still have a CD, believe it or not, with driver packs on it. And I'll throw that sucker in there. It finds it. Boom. That's the only driver I install, and I'm on my way. And then, I use Windows updates and then go to the OEM software company and just get the drivers from there.
Yeah, I haven't. I can't remember the last time I did a driver pack. I mean, I did use that years ago, but now I just on my my USB drive, not my thumb drive, but I actually have a 1 terabyte USB that I carry with me, where I have, my ISOs, and I have, got a whole section for drivers that I just keep on there. And mostly it's the NIC drivers or printer drivers. That's usually the things that I keep.
Oh, John was just sending a what he uses for his check-ins. Yeah, it's very similar. I use stuff from the TechNibble Business Kit. Mine's a front and back, but basically the same type of thing. So cool.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to get mine down to 1 page.
Well, I've got it. So 1 page or just 1 page front back?
1 page front.
Okay.
I don't know if I can do it, because it's, to get everything on there, front and back is really.
Well, I had to cut mine down a little bit as far as what my, what is covered, not covered. So my whole back is a whole. I mean, it's a whole page in itself of, basically liabilities and all that kind of stuff that they have to sign. So that's why I still keep it a 2-page. So the front page, basically, I only use on these sheets, believe it or not, I only use the top portion: name, address, email, username, password, phone number, the basic stuff that I need. And then I put all that stuff in a repair shopper manually, and, I go from there. So, and really all I use it for is the back part, which is basically, hey, sign here to sign your life away, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. When we had, when I worked at the store, we basically, ours was a 5.5 by 8 carbon copy, where we took the information on the front, and the back was all the disclaimer stuff. And I'd like to, obviously I don't think I can get back to something like that, but problem is most of my stuff is either over the phone or with current customers. So really, I'm sending them an invoice, and then I'm sending them a second sheet with all that information. And that's what I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
So what I do for if I'm over the phone or over the internet, or I'm doing remote support, especially for the first time, I actually have a page on my website that I can take the customer to, or send the customer to, and then they can basically, it's a bunch of check boxes, and they're basically, it's not a signature per se, but they're virtually signing it. Now, I also do have an intake form that I can use with a repair shopper that I can add to a web page on my website. I just have not taken the time to do that yet, but eventually I'm going to get to go and do that. And I think you can do a digital signature just using your mouse, and it actually works pretty well.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but I'm definitely looking at the different ways that I can, make it work so that, people can either fill out their own information, which will help me. But like I said, a lot of my business is still face to face.
Yeah.
It's just how I do. It's actually how I prefer to do business, to be honest. So it takes more time, but it works for me.
It does. John says his is a half page, but it's 2 sides.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it's he put a link in the
there it is.
There. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, brick and mortar, retail, and mostly consumer. Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you've got a place where people are dropping stuff off, it's easy to do that. For me, it's harder unless I have something that I take with me to see a first-time customer.
Yeah, and that's why I still, like I said, I still do the paper copy because it works. But I think if I was in a shop, I don't know, I probably would set up a Repair Shopper has a real neat thing in there that you can actually set up a check-in kiosk.
Right.
Using an iPad or a Android tablet or whatever, or even a small laptop or something like that. You can do that where people can check in on their own, and it goes in the system, and they sign all that stuff right there, and they're good to go. So there's many different ways to do it. You have to do it the way you're comfortable with doing it and what makes sense for you as far as your workflow.
Yeah.
I'm always trying, if a part of me is always trying to improve a little bit, but part of me also kind of likes doing the same things. When I find something that works, I kind of stick with that and don't really get too much outside of that unless I really need to. And if the process is slowing me down, or I have too much business that I've got to, streamline it a bit, then I'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and stop the live broadcast. Appreciate everybody coming out this week. And, we'll see you here next Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week.